Good evening, everybody. It is time for FREEology Friday. I'm excited because I've been out of the saddle for over a week. Last week we had a blast in the NAMAD 2020 conference. But this week it's back to business, and it's back to the business of kicking the ass of religion on a weekly basis. And that's what we do here. So I'm glad you're here, but I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to do a quick couple of shares and get my stuff out where it needs to be, if my devices will cooperate. So there we go. So let's go ahead and do some sharing is caring. Yeah, I missed you guys. I hope you missed me too. So here we go. Let's get some shares going. We're going to share to a group, and this is going to go to 3Chord Live, and then I will also share it to Goma. Hey. Hopefully my music is not going to run afoul of the Facebook gods. We're going to try to do this with a little bit of music. One more, and then we are good to go. All right, so all the sharing is done. And as I mentioned, this is 3Chord Live, and it is FREEology Friday. And a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff to talk about. And I have a really good subject to talk about today. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. But first of all, let's go ahead and do some shout outs for the people who took the time to watch. And I apologize for being late, but you know, brothers got to get them dollars, right? So had to do some work. So Robbie, thank you for joining. Robbie Martin, Esther Lacey, part of my extended Agape family. Thank you for joining. Edith Berry, one of my faves on Facebook. Thanks for joining, my sister. Dr. Lamont McNeese, Dr. Mac in the house. Good to see you, brother. Love you, man. Love all you're doing. Albie Martinez, thank you for joining. Good to see you out here. Love you. Michelle Brown, my sister, thank you for joining. Good, always good to see you. Hope everything is going better. Kathy Bailey, one of my Facebook faves. That sister is on fire. Fire, fire, fire. Gotta say it like Beavis. Fire, 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 fire. Cynthia Burnside, my sister from my Agape Dominion family, thank you for joining. All right. So I think that we have everybody that's going to joining. And I'm going to say something here that, first of all, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised if many people don't join in, sign in, watch this, whatever. I don't think that I'm like the most popular person on Facebook these days, partially because I've taken such a vociferous stand against police brutality and racism. But you have to understand that this is something that I have seen happen all of my life. And now it's reached a head. But I'm so encouraged because there are so many non-black brothers and sisters out here that are speaking up on behalf of black people who have been murdered, executed by police. I'm excited because this gives me hope. Y'all, this gives me life. I cannot begin to tell you. So this is what I want to talk about today, is that I want to talk about the tapestry of America and how we can reweave this. Because right now, and I said this, and I've been on a lot of podcasts lately, and thank you for everybody, Jason Elam, Katie Valentine, and everybody else that's invited me to these podcasts. Todd Vick, Carl Forehand. I'm grateful. for all of the invites and for you giving me the opportunity to share my heart. But I said in each and every one of these podcasts that right now I am at the intersection of hope and despair. And despair because, I mean, listen, y'all, I am just absolutely fucking tired of seeing black people murdered for no other reason than their skin color. I'm tired of it. It grieves me to no end. And as this whole pandemic plays out and people are already on edge, people are already nervous as cats and long-tailed cats in a room full of rocking chairs, I get it. I get it. This is not an easy time for anybody, but it's like my kids are chomping at the bit to get back to their social lives and chomping at the bit to get back out into the world and back into the things that they like to do. And I am absolutely terrified about the prospect of releasing them into this. Because I've got to give them this talk. I've got to tell them, listen, in addition to, if you're gonna have sex, have safe sex. Preferably don't have sex. But if you have sex, have safe sex. Whatever it is that you're doing, just be safe, be smart, right? Because listen, they're kids, they're teenagers, they're young men, and they're gonna do some crazy stuff. I get that. But it's like, in addition to all of that, I have to remind them, y'all, listen, please, pretty please, don't have me come out to claim the contents of a body bag. And that's the conversation I have to have with my kids. I don't know about you, but every time I have to have that conversation, it frustrates me to no end. I mean, it really does. A part of me dies every time I have to have this conversation. And I hope that you never do. If you haven't, that's great. And I hope that you never do. I would not wish this feeling on my worst enemy. I wouldn't wish it on somebody that I absolutely had disdain and dislike for. I wouldn't. This is a horrible, horrible, horrible feeling. But that's the despair part. But here's the hope. That the needle is moving. We are coming out of the post-Reconstruction era America for the first time. Because now people are getting it. And it's just like Bloody Sunday, the march over the Edmund Pettus Bridge and the Civil Rights Movement in 1965, that this was a seminal point in the Civil Rights Movement because white people saw it happen in real time. And they chose to act. So much so that they broke the switchboards of the White House and the Capitol. They broke them because the calls were coming so fast and furious. And now we have awesome, truly loving white brothers and sisters that are flooding the internet, flooding social media with their outrage, their grief, their empathy, and their compassion. And I can't express how grateful I feel, the gratitude that I feel from this. I cannot, if I could just do a drive-by hug on all of you guys, I would do it. I mean, listen, this is it gives me so much hope, so much life. But I want to talk about this because this, there are some things that we need to come to grip with in this country. And the first and foremost, and I've said this in all of these podcasts that I've been privy to be a guest on, that Condoleezza Rice, former Secretary of State, said that America's birth defect is racism. Because this country was literally founded on it. It was founded on it in the destruction of Native American people, displacing them from the lands that they had had since time immemorial, and the enslavement of people from Africa. Now, this is what this country was built on. The wealth of this country was built on the violent acquisition of land and the violent enslavement of human beings. This is what this country is founded on. This is what fueled the economic engine of this country. This is what brought America to a place in prominence in the world. And it did it in a short period of time. Now, yes, you could say, yeah, well, they had slavery in Europe and other countries. Every country, every culture has had slaves, but not in the way that America did, and not to the end that America used it. So in order to really fix this problem of race relations in America, of police brutality, which police brutality, y'all, has a direct correlation, I won't even say a correlation, that's putting it too mildly, a direct relationship or a direct connection to racism. And I'm going to get to that. But this has to be acknowledged. I remember not too long ago, I had been diagnosed with a heart condition. Now, I'm grateful that I'm healed, that I'm better. I mean, all of the metrics that measure that say that I'm good, and I'm glad of that. However, had I not gone to the doctor when I did, the condition that I had, it would have remained untreated, and it would have gotten worse until one of the possible outcomes was my death. Do y'all hear me? So in order to troubleshoot a problem, it's like if you get a check engine light on in your car, you need to take that rascal down to the dealership or to someone who has some knowledge about diagnostic codes for your car to troubleshoot what the problem is before your car winds up an expensive paperweight. And so America has, soldiered on 200 plus years, having never diagnosed its most glaring fault. But there's good news. And that good news is that this is treatable. Now, I know there are some people that don't have a whole lot of hope, that they think that, well, basically the country ought to burn to the ground and start all over again. And I'm going to tell you something. I'll be perfectly honest with you, that there is a part of me that feels that way. But I try not to let that part of me, be the prevailing part of me, because I'm a dealer in hope. See, I got your fix. I got your hope. And the hope is that if we can really be honest about some things, that we can reweave this tapestry of America. I remember back in the late 70s, if you're from Detroit, you know about this. And if you went to Cass Tech, you really knew about this. But there was this thing, it was a phenomenon, it was called Swedish Nets. How many of y'all remember that? I don't know how many of y'all are old enough to remember that, but Swedish knit pants were basically these either polyester or polywool blend pants that had this nifty little stitch down the side. It was like almost sort of that the thing that you see on untailored suits. It's like the stitching that's like around the shoulder, where the sleeve meets the shoulder, and around the buttons and things like that. And it's sort of one of those things that, you look at this and you say, oh, okay, this is like a custom suit, right? Well, Swedish knits were like that. And this was a thing that it was a fad. It was a fashion fad. And so everybody, I mean, all the black kids anyway, were rushing out trying to get Swedish Knits. You went to Lewis the Hatter, or you went to Jack's Place, or you went to Sermons, or Man Oh Man, or Van Dyke's, wherever you went in Detroit, and you got you some Swedish Knits. But here was the thing: Swedish Knits played out real quick. Swedish Knits played out. And so there were some people that bought the real expensive ones, that's where the wool, or wool and silk, or wool and silk and poly blend, or rayon blend, the real good ones. But the rest of us, and then we were not poor, but couldn't afford OR, that we got the polyester ones. But in all the cases, the stitching was a problem, because that was the thing that identified the fad. So in order to undo the fad and make this garment continue to be functional and reasonably stylish, you had to take the stitching out. Now, if you were really careful, you could take some very fine pointed shears and clip each stitch individually, and then take a pair of tweezers and you pull it out. And that was that. Now you didn't have the trademark of the fad. The fad was past, and now the hallmark of your allegiance to the fad is gone too. And now you're able to move forward. So until knit pants, or gabardines as they were called, because basically gabardine slacks were like wool or wool poly or poly blend slacks that didn't have the stitch. So basically you could take these Swedish knits that you had sunk a whole bunch of money into trying to be hip, undo that, and you were able to move on. And that is what I'm getting at, is that basically racism is the stitch in America's Swedish knits. And it's something that persisted for so long because even if you yourself were not a racist, you benefited from it. Well, you say, Derek, how is that possible? Look here. You had black men that went off to fight in World War I and World War II and the Korean War and even the Vietnam War, that when they returned home, there were programs that were set up for veterans. There were veterans home loans. There was the GI Bill for college. There were veterans small business loans, veterans block grants, a whole bunch of things that were designed to help the American fighting men returning from abroad get reassimilated into society and get a benefit for placing their lives on the line. Unless you were black. Now, if you were black, you couldn't participate in the home loans. Why? Because lenders would not make loans to certain zip codes. Even if you had great credit, even if you had a veteran backing, you couldn't get it. And the same thing with businesses. There were businesses that could not obtain business loans, or even if they could obtain business loans, they could not obtain insurance because of redlining. And so meanwhile, white GIs that came home, they were able to build wealth through acquisition of real estate, through college education. Oh, and that's the other thing. See, the GI college benefits, they were not extended to historically black colleges and universities, and therefore you would only get into a major university. I mean, you could only get the money if you were going to a major university, and you could only get into a major university if you were black if you got some exception. Okay, because they just didn't accept. So basically all of the things, the grants, loans for businesses, for housing, money for college, all this stuff, it meant nothing to the black GI. And so what happened is that white people were able to build an entire new generation of wealth that black people couldn't. Now, we go back further before World Wars, and we go back to the Civil War, and in Reconstruction, it was like, black people started getting all of these rights, started building businesses, started buying land, even getting elected to Congress and governorships and all of that. And the white people who supported slavery, and even some that didn't, were angered about this. And so they came up with Jim Crow laws that were specifically designed to impede the economic and social progress of black people. So we have almost the entire history of the United States dedicated to keeping black people down. And lest I forget my Native American brothers and sisters, is that a lot of these same programs were denied the natives as well. And somehow somebody thought that giving Native Americans reservations with autonomy to make decisions was somehow a form of reparations or something that would reconcile this debt. It wasn't. It did nothing, because basically everything had been stolen from them from the beginning. The land, let me tell you something. Let me explain something. Is that there are two components to any successful business. There's labor and there's capital. And the two things that America got in terms of labor and capital, they got by theft. And people say, well, slaves were sold into slavery, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, this was all theft. Even if you go back to Africa and look at people that, and listen, the number of black people that sold black people into slavery is really, really tiny. Basically somebody who wanted to basically get into a little confirmation bias found these exceptions, just like people say, well, some blacks owned slaves during the Civil War. You would only find that if you're going to look for some confirmation bias that basically dispels your racism. So anyway, even if you yourself were not racist, but if you were white in America, you got a benefit. And so there was no cry to try to rectify these problems, because even if you were not actively participating in it, you were a beneficiary. And here's the other thing too, is that yes, you dear white brothers and sisters today have never owned a slave. And some of you have never participated in anything that is discriminatory. Never. I mean, your conscious slate is clean. Except that the standard of living that you enjoy is likely at the expense of others. And this is the problem. This is the American problem, because we've gotten into this whole concept of rugged individualism. Rugged individualism. Everybody is survival of the fittest. That the best and the brightest are going to produce the best and the brightest products, goods, services, and all of this, and manifest destiny, and all of these things. That somehow this was lost on black folks. But let me tell you something about rugged individualism. First of all, there's no such thing. Because everybody that built some wealth, they built it because they were helped by someone else. Do you know that Henry Ford had failed in his first attempts at manufacturing? But Thomas Edison believed in him, and they collaborated on some things that resulted in the perfection of the modern assembly line. And it was also one thing that you may not know, is that Dodge, the car company, the Dodge brothers were mechanics, and basically almost all the parts of the original Model T were built by the Dodge brothers. The Dodge brothers became wealthy, and the Dodge Motor Car Company became something because of their relationship to Henry Ford. And Henry Ford would not be Henry Ford without the Dodge brothers. And Henry Ford would not be Henry Ford without Thomas Edison. Do you follow what I'm saying? You know, the Alexander Graham Bell is not exceptional. Without his help, he would not have been, without the help of Thomas Edison and some others, George Westinghouse, he would not be who he is. And George Westinghouse would not be who he is without Andrew Carnegie. I mean, you know, you could just go on and on and on and on. Every story of wealth is not some guy who picked himself up by his bootstraps and just ruggedly produced something. No, they had help. And do you know that there were black people at the turn of the 20th century that were thriving even though they didn't have that same kind of help. All they had was to help each other. All they had was to pull their own resources together. And matter of fact, Thomas Edison, I'll tell you what, look this up. Lewis Latimer. Look up Lewis Latimer, because Lewis Latimer is a guy who basically developed and patented the filament in incandescent bulbs. In other words, there was no light bulb without a black man. But I'm not going to get into all of that. All I'm saying is that this whole thing about rugged individualism is a farce. And people say, well, if you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, listen, black people and Native Americans have had boots denied to them, boots that they managed to get stolen from them, and boots that they managed to hold on to deliberately hobbled and defected by society. So here we have the modern economic miracle of the world that's built on a lie. This is the problem. And the thing is that as history moves forward, see, this is the beautiful thing. Back in the day, in the turn of the 20th century, through the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, information was not widely available. There were limitations to, because not everybody could get access to the right schools. Not everybody could have access to the best libraries. Not everybody had access to the books. And then there was no interconnected information as it is in the internet today. So information is also a key to building an economic powerhouse. If you don't have good information, you will fail. Now, all of this in the past was able to be swept under the rug nice and conveniently, and we were able to say, hey, look at America. America is great. We're the greatest nation in the world. We're the most prosperous nation in the world. We are the land of opportunity. We are the land of the free and the home of the brave, except it's all bullshit. The reality is that all of this was built on the backs of someone else. America rose to its place in prominence in the world by theft and murder. And there you have it. Now, people say, well, Derek, that's not a very patriotic thing to say. And, I'm honestly, I have zero fucks to give on that score. Not one. And here's the thing. I'll be honest with you. I actually love this country. I was born here. I was raised here. I served in its military in uniform for 7 years, honorably discharged. But I also recognize that this country owes me a debt, and millions of others that are like me. Now, the first step on the path to recovery is admitting that there is a problem. And again, because of the lack of information, you were able to just conveniently sweep shit under the rug. You can't do that now because Google will flush you out. Google is like throwing a rock into a blind and watching all the ducks come out or all the doves come out. Because now, when you go and search, you can find what the truth really is. And the truth is out there. X-Files. The truth is out there. But you have to look. And here's the other thing too, is that first of all, there is like a lot of intellectual laziness in this country. In other words, nobody really wants to look up things or search for things or find out things. You know, people are just, they like to be spoon-fed, which is why religion is so successful here. Because people like to be spoon-fed. They don't really like to think for themselves. I let other people do the thinking. I just want to eat. I just want to watch TV. I just want my MTV. But if you exercise a little bit of intellectual discipline and couple that with a little bit of intellectual honesty, you'll find that what I'm saying is true. Now, the question is, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? Because, you know, there's a lot of people that say, hey, you know, we need to consider reparations for black people, the descendants of slaves. And me personally, I like the idea of reparations because I like the idea of money. You know, it's like a way of kind of leveling the playing field, if you will. But I also realize that that is probably not going to happen because black people have no political power, no economic power, and no social power. So, you know, the only way that we would ever possibly get reparations is if, you know, Americans at large really had a complete change of heart and said, you know what, we do owe a debt, which that's not going to happen. Because again, even if you're not racist, you benefit from it if you're white. Okay? Now, so reparations, that's not really a good thing. And then people say, well, you know, how about make a college education free for everybody? Well, the easy fix for that, if you're in the racist policies, is just to make sure the schools are just so absolutely shitty that nobody could ever get into college except by quotas. And if they get in by quotas, then that creates another can of worms because you say, oh, well, they only got in because they had a quota that they had to meet for the number of blacks that they had to have in the school. So free college education may not do it. Perhaps, you know, not in addition to college, maybe vocational and technical training. You know, maybe, I don't know, that because I think, you know, honestly, not everybody's cut out for college. Not everybody, you know, and I really believe that I think that this country has, white and black, has put too much pressure on people to get college degrees instead of learning skilled trades and things like that, because now we're at a deficit for that, and it's really hurting us. The full pain of that has not yet been felt, but that's another lesson for another time. Another possible thing is to say, okay, that if you are the descendants of African slaves in America, that you get a tax break, that you and your kinfolk get a tax break for, I don't know, 200 years. Just say for 200 years, no African-American, black, Negro, whatever in America has to pay taxes. Get a free ride. I don't know. You know, what the answer is, I don't know. I'm not really sure. Haven't really, I mean, I have ideas, but I'm vetting those out because when I do put forth a public solution, I want to make sure that it's fully baked. I honestly, I don't like half-baked solutions. So the question is, I don't know what the answer is. All I know is that there is a debt that is owed. Okay? And the other thing too is that I hear some white people, and typically these are conservative Christians, that say, oh, well, Derek, we just need to let the past be the past. And we forgive and forget. There's a problem with that, though. See, you can forgive. Certainly, you can forgive. And you can forget if the atrocity is no longer being done to you. But when the atrocity continues to rear its head in your society, in your culture, as long as it continues to happen, how can you forget? You ask us to forgive and forget, but you keep reminding us. And that doesn't work. And so listen, I'm forgiving. I even forgive people who are still doing things to me. It's easy to forgive someone who's not, that they're not committing the offense against you that they had before. But, I've learned to forgive even those who are still doing it. But I am no longer respectfully requesting, but I am demanding that you get your fucking boot off my neck. Not asking. I'm telling you, this has got to stop. Now, this is not a threat or anything like that. That's not the point. I'm just saying that if going forward, that all of this shit's got to stop. There's a meme on the internet going around now that shows a lady holding a placard saying, stop police killing of blacks. That sign, that meme is a photograph from 55 years ago. So that means that in 55 years that this has not moved at all. That this is still a problem. And as long as this is a problem, listen, I'm not in favor of riots. I'm not in favor of destruction of property. But I understand. I'm not for, and listen, there is never, ever an excuse for hurting another person. And that I don't understand. I don't extend any empathy to that, because it's like the only way that I am ever going to do something violent to someone is if I am threatened. If I'm threatened, I'm going to react. Just be honest. Listen, I love Jesus, but I'm not Jesus. You're not just going to sit up and hit me on both sides of my face and think that that's cool. So we need to stop what is being done to blacks and natives and Latinos. Latinos suffer from this too. This just happened in the Phoenix area where it wasn't Phoenix. It was actually in New Mexico, where a young Latino man was gunned down by cops, and again, it was for no other reason than he was brown. That was it. The guy was not a criminal, not in the process of committing a crime. It's just like he was just shot down. And y'all listen, that's got to stop. And so that brings me to another thing, this defunding the police. Because let me start with this, because first of all, you need a history lesson. If you haven't heard this yet, let me explain this to you. That before police departments began to spring up in municipalities, basically you had a loosely federated system of sheriffs, constables, and other quasi-law enforcement groups. And they would deputize people as needed. You didn't have paid deputies. You had maybe a paid sheriff, but the deputies were all volunteers. The sheriff would go out and deputize people based on need. And that was kind of how law enforcement worked until slave trackers came along. See, because slavery is such a fucked up institution that people wanted to leave. They wanted to escape plantations. And so when they did, they had to find a vehicle or means by which they were able to stop the escapes and return this runaway property back to its owners. And so the slave trackers learned things like about tracking and tracing, about witness interrogation, about forensic evidence, and things like that. And so I have said, I'm on the record as saying this, that I honestly believe that not all police officers are racist. No, 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 no. I don't believe that all police officers are racist. There is a racist in every bunch, but not all of them are racist. I've met some awesome police officers. One of my favorite is a friend of mine on Facebook, Michael Porter. To you, namaste, my brother. And I'm going to tell you something, man. Mike Porter, he's white, but he's one of the blackest motherfuckers I know. So I'm just going to keep it real. Here's the deal. That not all police are racist, but 100% of police departments in America are racist. 100%. Why? Because they trace their origins back to the slave trackers. Now, of course, you can make some exceptions, and I want to cite out Camden, New Jersey as one, because Camden went through a police overhaul. And since they have done that, police killings of unarmed people has gone down significantly. That crime has dropped. Violent crime has dropped. Crime overall has dropped. And the police are more engaged with the community. And so they're doing more effective community policing. And it's a beautiful thing, right? But not everybody's doing that. So maybe not 100%, maybe like 99.999% racist. Because I'm going to give an out for Camden. I'm going to give them a shout out, okay, and a hall pass because of what they've done. Now, again, white people don't necessarily or have not historically gotten involved in this police brutality thing because at a certain level they benefited from it. Because they're able to say, well, the police keep us safe. The police are our friends. The police protect our property. They protect our lives. Their presence keeps crime down and yada, 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 yada. But meanwhile, police are killing black people for no other reason than being black. And they're prosecuting them or arresting them for crimes that are really picayune. And matter of fact, this just happened recently. There were some kids that got arrested. It's on videos. They got arrested and handcuffed for jaywalking. Jaywalking. So this stuff goes on. And so when we talk about defunding the police department, we're not talking about just saying, hey, get rid of police altogether. That'd be dumb. Because, like I said, there are good police officers. And the police do serve a vital function. However, as long as police departments are based and rooted in racist practices, that means that all it takes is one good racist to get on the force. And the FBI had produced a study saying that most police departments in the United States have been infiltrated by white supremacists. It only takes one. And once that one gets in there, if he nuts up, if he fucks up, the police department, because of its racist inherent nature, will go out of its way to protect that one. And so he gets a hall pass. And what do people do? If you continuously get a hall pass for the same shit over and over again, what you'll do is you'll just completely repeat that behavior. Why? Because you know there are no consequences. And here's the other thing too, is that this has been a thing where it's not just the citizens of the country, but the businesses and the communities and the governments and the educational apparatuses and the institutions of faith that have all benefited from this. And so there is no reason for people to cry out, except now. As one of my heroes, Will Smith, said, that racism is not getting worse, it's just getting filmed. See, the whole thing about smartphones and the internet means that real-time information gets to you lickety-split. You can't hide this stuff anymore. And so if enough of this gets into the public consciousness, And people realize, because I believe that most of humanity is good. See, I'm not one of those preachers that says, hey, everybody's a rotten, dirty sinner, and their heart's wicked, their mind's wicked, and you're totally depraved and all. I don't believe that. I believe that humanity at its core is good. Matter of fact, it's very good. Okay, that's what your Bible says. Don't take my word for it. Your Bible says that man is very good. So, if humanity is very good, that means that if this becomes widespread enough, that people are going to see it and say, whoa, man, that's fucked up. They're going to say, we got to fix this. Now, I'm going to say something else, and then this is bordering on the really controversial, and I need to get to an end because I don't want to take up too much of your Friday night. This is Friday night. You might want to go get your drink on, get your freak on, whatever it is that you want to do. I'm good with that, but bear with me for just a minute. That black people in America are not the cause of racism in America. Now, people will say, well, you stop being the victim, stop having the victim mentality and all of that. And I said this earlier this week that, if I believe that I'm persecuted unfairly without just cause, if I can't point to anything forensically, empirically that says that I'm victimized, then yes, if I say I'm a victim without any corroborating data, then yes, I have a victim mindset, a victim mentality, and that I need to fix. That's my problem. But if every time I walk down the street, somebody is trying to kick me in the nuts, then I am the victim of some people who are trying to kick me in the nuts. Do you see the difference? Because if somebody is actually doing something to you, and you could say empirically, listen, and honestly, listen, the way love works is that love goes out of its way not to harm. Love goes out of its way to bless and not curse. Love goes out of its way to help and not hurt. This is what love does. But if you say that you have love, but you are either A, willing to kick me in the nuts, or B, willing to watch me get kicked in the nuts and not say anything, then you are the problem, not me. Because see, this whole scenario of how the racial and social pecking order is orchestrated and ordained in America is not the product of any black mind. We didn't do it. So when you say, when people try to put the onus on black people to try to fix this problem, this is not our problem to fix. Now, here's the problem, is that honestly, all 100% of you white people that are watching this, you didn't have shit to do with this. Nothing. You didn't cause it, but you benefit from it. And because you benefit from it, and this is human nature, this is not an indictment against white people, but this is human nature, that when something is benefiting you, you don't want it to go away. It's like if you're able to go to a specific location every day and pick up $1,000, you don't have to work for it. You didn't earn it. There was no requirement for you to get it. All you do is you just show up at this location, and every day there's $1,000 waiting for you. If this happens to you, you will go out of your way to protect that source. You won't tell anybody about it. You'll make sure that you vary your travel pattern to make sure that nobody sees you going to get this. You will protect this because it's in your best interest to do it. However, if you were to find out that this $1,000 that showed up every day, every day there's $1,000 waiting for you, but later you find out that every time you take that $1,000 that a human being dies. Now, taking this money, even though you didn't cause the problem, you're benefiting from it, but someone else is being harmed for it. That is the problem. And that needs to be fixed. If we are to say that we as a country live up to its creed that all men and women are created equal, that if that's the case, you can't pick up that money anymore. You have to say that, okay, if I'm going to have $1,000 a day, that I have to find a way to add value or to put something back into society, back into the universe that is worth that $1,000. But if you're just going to take it and then you find out that it is killing somebody, then that means that's an ill-gotten gain on your part. And so every time a black person is denied a college admission, every time a black person is discriminated against in the workplace, every time a black person is denied housing, every time a black person is denied loans or capital or anything like that, that basically you have picked up $1,000 that has come at the expense of another life. And that, I can't really explain it any better than that. But the thing is, this is the beauty of it, is that we have reached a tipping point, as author Malcolm Gladwell would say. We've reached a tipping point where this is no longer a flash in the pan. This is no longer a fad. This is a real thing. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. When NAS fucking car steps up and says no more Confederate flags at its events, dog, you know that something is underfoot. There is a sea change underfoot. There is a tsunami of change. There is an earthquake of change. There is a seismic, cosmic change that is happening right now. And this is something that can no longer be denied. It is happening right. History is being made right before our eyes. And listen, this is the moment. This is the time. Listen, some of you may get weary. Some of you may get tired, but don't let up. The protests are working. This is changing the fabric. And what we're doing in doing this is that this thread of racism that's run throughout the fabric, the tapestry of America, that this thread is being unraveled. And here's the beautiful part, is that by unraveling this one thread is not going to do any harm to the tapestry itself. In fact, it's basically, imagine if somebody put an embroidery of a turd on the American flag. What is happening today is that that embroidery of the turd, the stain on the American flag, is being removed. It is being unraveled, and the fabric of the flag, or the fabric of America, will not be harmed. It won't hurt. Yes, it's going to be difficult. Yes, it's going to require some mindset changes. Yes, it's going to, and listen, I'm going to tell y'all something. Get in the mindset of how can you engage with people not like you. If you're black, break bread with some white folks. If you're white, break bread with some black folks. If you're white or black, break bread with some Indians. I'm talking about Indians from India, not just Native Americans, but break bread with the natives too. But find somebody outside of your cultural space, outside of your comfort zone, and go out and make some friends, make some new friends. Get used to this whole thing about this being a true melting pot. Because see, here's the thing, we say, oh, the great American melting pot, that's been bullshit. Because it isn't really a melting pot. It's only a melting pot for the people who are not part of the privileged class. Because all the rest of us are expected to melt into and assimilate into, but the privileged class are able to maintain their own identity. Y'all see how that works? So this is not an indictment. I want y'all to understand this, and I want y'all to hear my heart. Listen, if we're going to say that we are a Christian nation, which we're not, or if we're going to say that we want to make America great, which it isn't, but if we're going to do these things, that's going to require some effort. It's going to require some blood, some sweat, and some tears. It's going to require some intellectual honesty. It's going to require backing away from logical fallacy and confirmation bias. It's going to require some things. It's going to require some intellectual initiative and not laziness. It's going to require some intellectual honesty and not dishonesty. And it's going to require some vulnerability. And let me say this too, please, people, that when people show you their heart, when they demonstrate this vulnerability to you, don't take advantage of it. Because if you do that, you'll fuck up the whole experiment. Okay, so don't do that. And that's all I have. That's it. You know, I hope that this will give you as much hope as I'm feeling right now. Because I'm hopeful. And I've called out people by name, and I'm not going to do that this time. But all of you white brothers and sisters, and y'all know who you are, who have taken up this cause and have boldly proclaimed out in the marketplace, out in society, in your workplace, in your schools, in your churches, where you said Black Lives Matter, I salute you. And I'm grateful for you. And for everyone else, I encourage you to take a step back and look at this through the lens of empathy and compassion. Look at it through the lens of love. And if you do that, you'll wake up. And you'll be the part of the change. So, If you have any questions, comments, hit me up at www.derekday.com. Go to the contact link, click contact, and it will create a form. You can type that in and send me an email. And whether you agree or disagree with me, I don't care. Whether you like me or don't like me, or whether you want to call me a motherfucker, whatever, I don't care. I will respond to you. Okay. And also you can reach me on Facebook. Obviously, Derek Day Multimedia is my page. And you can also hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. My handle is Derek E. Day. That's DERRICKEDAY. You can hit me up on YouTube. Hundreds and hundreds of videos. And I kept all of my old stuff from when I was like kind of a legalist so that you could see my growth. It's important that you show growth so that people understand growth. Okay, so you can go back and you can look at all of that. You can see all of the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of my video posts, and that's cool. Also, you can subscribe to my podcast, which is called the Love Forward Podcast. And I promise you, I am going to get around to recording another episode or some more episodes this weekend. And last but not least, don't forget to check out my blog on Pathos. It's called Love Minus Religion. And I will be back on Sunday with Quantum Spirituality. And that's it, man. So until the next time, I love you with all my heart. I promise you I do. Namaste. And we'll talk soon.